Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Experience Kills. I am your host Ben, and with me today is Rob.
Hello. How's everyone doing?
Well, I'm doing alright. I've been playing a really curious little game, Rob, and I kind of want to talk to you about it.
Okay.
And I think you might have some questions for me, and yeah, it's a different type of game experience, and I'm always keen to check them out. And I've been playing Journey of the Broken Circle by Lovable Hat Cult, which is a fantastic name. Fantastic name.
Wonderful name. Incredible
name. And this, I mean, it's a really curious little experience. They say it's a game about falling in love and falling out of love. And it deals with lots of big psychological issues, existentialism and all things like that, and to do with the complexities of modern relationships through a game that is, quite simplistic in its visual sort of nature. You play as this sort of little circle that rolls around with a little slice missing out from them, and your quest is to find something to fill that gap, because rolling around without it is a bit jarring and things don't work quite as well, and you need something to really sort of pop in that hole and to complete you. And it's kind of beautiful in that regard. It's kind of sweet and adorable in its approach to that. And then as the game progresses and you experiment, I suppose, with different things to fill in your incomplete circle, you go through these dialogues and meet these characters and have these interactions that are very, very well written, very humanistic, very, very natural, very realistic. And all the time that you're doing this, you're dealing with them in this very obfuscated manner, in which it might be a tree you're talking to, or a bunch of balloons, or what looks like a shell, or a slug monster, or various other odd entities, but yet the dialogue and the connections could be straight out of very realistic relationships that I would imagine the developers have experienced throughout their lives, and that they've put them into this game to really get to the bottom of what it is to be in love, to fall in love, to fall out of love. Mm-hmm. And as you get older, I know I've experienced that gamut, and everybody approaches it differently, and there are now more than ever more different types of love and relationship that are openly talked about, and this game really does approach a great deal of them, and I really recommend it for that, and I really commend it for that. And they've already won lots of plaudits and awards from various organizations due to how they deal with it. However, sadly, the gameplay itself isn't always the best. And it's one of those experiences where I think the idea behind this, the desire to explore these themes, is what drove the development, and it wasn't the gameplay. And I could be wrong. I don't know that. But it's definitely the strength of the game is in those themes and in that dialogue, and it's not in the moment-to-moment gameplay, which can be either fairly rote, basic, or at times incredibly frustrating. So before I dig into that, I wondered if you had any questions or thoughts you'd like to ask me about this particular little game, Journey of the Broken Circle.
I've been looking some of the footage, and obviously we've got gameplay going up behind us as we're talking here, and how the game looks is just astonishing. The simple use of colours just to generate that 3D space. It looks like side-scroller, is that right, almost?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It looks absolutely wonderful. They remember handling distance very well, and so on. What's sort of the gameplay loop? Is it just traversal of a fairly linear path, or is it options for exploration, different areas locked behind different shape additions? But how does that function?
Yeah, so for the most part is left to right traversal, as you'd expect from a sort of a side-scrolling platformer. You have a jump, and what is interesting and what you need to bear in mind here is that the different things you plug into the gap in the circle will have different effects on you and actually give you different powers and abilities, and it does work as a rather brilliant metaphor for the ways in which different people in your life will actually help you in different ways, but also have the opposite effect. And become challenging, or maybe give you issues that you weren't expecting. And it does an incredible job at representing that. However, there is one sequence in this game that will stand out to me as one of the most frustrating platforming experiences of my entire life in video games, which was at one point, I won't go into details, the controls of just left to right are flipped. So So you push right on the stick and you go left. You push left on the stick and you go right. And I won't
God!
And I won't talk about why, because it has a really kind of decent narrative reason I don't want to spoil. But in a moderately tricky platforming section, that makes it 100 times harder and 1,000,000 times less fun. So I really did not enjoy trying to get through that section, and it was just death after death after death after death after death after death. I can't even begin, because once, especially at this point midway in the game, you'd got so used to the mechanics that to flip them like that, it's like an ingrained instinct. And again, that's probably intentional, right? There are reasons that they did what they did at that point in the game, and it makes total sense in that regard. However, from just a gameplay perspective, I hated it. I hated it so bloody much.
Wonderful idea, very thematically appropriate.
Yep. Just not fun.
Errors in thought.
Just not fun. And again, you could even go beyond that and say it's probably not meant to be fun. It's probably meant to be frustrating. It's meant to be challenging, and all of that connects. And I get it, but yeah, that just makes playing it not great. And it's a shame, because a game like this, you could have almost gone for less gameplay, right? You could have almost gone for more of just this is narrative, this is, I've played games like 3/4 Home is a great example. 3/4 Home is this little indie game on consoles. It's available on basically everything. It's been out for a few years, and I reviewed it. And you have one mechanic in that game, which is hold down a trigger to go, right? So there's barely any game to this. There's the visuals and the stuff, and things happen, but it's just a way to deliver a beautifully written story with wonderful characters and emotional thematic beats and stuff like that. And that's kind of what we've got in Journey of the Broken Circle. However, there's more gameplay here. There's more conventional platforming, and then there are these twists on it that don't always work. And that's a shame, because it creates a barrier for enjoying the experience and the writing, which is clearly the strength. So now I don't think this game is poorly made in any area. I think the music is lovely and minimal and very thematically fitting and always works
atmospheric.
well in the scenes. Yeah, atmospheric. That's a very good word for it. And then I really like you mentioned, the pastel colours, the simplistic look to the game, which means you can really focus on. There are times when the traversal is wonderful, where you're rolling or something and you're moving at speed and everything coming together, and there is this great sense of journey throughout, life and emotion and growth, and all of that comes together, and it really, really works. But other times it can be jarring and not so much fun. I do, however, think this game is worth checking out. This game is quite wonderful, and it is quite beautiful and affecting, and well observed and very well written, and yeah, for those reasons alone, you can ignore some of the problems with the platforming, and it's a small personal experience, and I love it when indie game developers do this, and they bring out stuff that you wouldn't expect, and it challenges you, and it asks questions, and it approaches what it is to be human, but does it in a way that's also removed from reality, so that there is a way in for people, that it doesn't feel like it's trying to preach to you or trying to force crap down your throat. And I think this is quite a wonderful little game, even with the problem as I discussed.
It sounds like they've hit a very good analogy for modern relationships. Sometimes it is going to be smooth sailing. You are going to be rolling down that hill at speed. Everything's going to be wonderful. And then there are going to be times where everything is going to be flipped 180 degrees. Your controls are going to be going left to right instead of right to left, and that sort of thing. So I think, by the sounds of it, they've hit that nail very well and very competently on the head. And it sounds like they've done an absolute wonderful job of all the story and the narrative design. And it is slightly unfortunate that the gameplay has almost come to the point of suffering in that particular example, but it's something that I think they definitely have the right idea, and it's interesting to see relationships explored in a game like this. It's interesting to see this as a vehicle for their discussion about this and their process and how they're working through that. So I think that's interesting. It's very interesting. And
to be honest, it doesn't just deal with relationships. I mean, it kind of it couches everything with that, because that's where the dialogue comes from, but it deals with a lot of issues. So we're talking like mental health issues as well.
Oh wow.
And it does it in a way that, again, never feels preachy. You always feels organic, and you only realize sort of after the fact what is being
Yeah.
talked about, and because it's not subtle, but at the same time it's dealt with very real, very realistically. It's not like when you're talking to someone, always alarm bells go off and you're hearing things and you're like, oh my god, like that. No, you think about it later, don't you? When you've had after the conversation in the evening, you're by yourself, you may be at home or whatever, and you're like, I'm gonna reach out to that person again because they need a friend, they need someone, and that's the kind of stuff that comes across in this game, and it is very impressive in that regard. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's perfect. The writing isn't always 100% there, and it does sometimes go a little bit too far into obfuscation, too far into metaphor and allegory, but for the most part it's doing an incredible job, and it's very, very, very ambitious and very hard to do what they're doing in a way that doesn't come across as like edutainment. That it's like, right, let's talk about these kinds of relationships. Let's talk about these kinds of mental health issues.
This chapter's about this.
It never does that. It never does that, and it always feels balanced and organic. And that's massively impressive. Massively impressive. So,
I think we've come full circle with this one.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
I almost don't want to hit you for that one because that was actually quite nice. That was actually quite nice.
Almost.
Yeah, almost. I do still kind of want to hit you, but that other reason. That was Journey of the Broken Circle by Lovable Hat Cult, which is a strong recommendation for me. While we've got a few faults on display here and critiques, there is a lot of good on display in this game. Honestly, well worth checking out if you're looking for a very different experience on your console. I reviewed this on my Xbox Series S. However, it's going to run on everything under the sun, and I believe it will be out on just about everything under the sun by the time this comes out on Xbox. So well worth checking out for the low prices being asked for. So yeah, that has been another episode of Experience Kills. I have been your host, Ben. You can find me at DIYE on Twitter. You can find Rob at Homeless Mr. Gibbs on Twitter, and you can find us collectively at Experience Kills. Just so you know, we have a weekly podcast that comes out in which we talk about all kinds of games and news and things we've been playing, and is well worth checking out on our channel. And while you're there, give us a like and a subscribe, and turn on that notifications feature as well so you know when we've got a new video coming out. But if you do want to enjoy our content and you can't sit in front of a smart device or a computer, we are also available in a podcast where anywhere a good podcast can be found. So iTunes, Spotify, and every smart device under the sun. And I think that's everything for now. We'll be back soon with much more amazing video content. Have a good day, everybody.
Farewell.